I work at Nationwide Children's Hospital as part of the Ohio State University in the Center for Gene Therapy with Jerry Mendel and Kevin Flanagan. I've been with them for about 2 years. And what I do is their outcome measures. So in preparation for our follistatin trial that we're about to begin for inclusion body myositis and Becker muscular dystrophy, I did a project where I'm trying to hedge our bets and come up with the most likely clinical outcome measure that's going to change if in fact we do change quadriceps strength. The follistatin trial, we're injecting a one-time injection, 12 in each leg, in just the quadriceps. And the follistatin will hopefully block the myostatin, which will allow the quadriceps muscles to grow exponentially. Since this is a proof of principle study, we're only doing one muscle, and we acknowledge that it takes a lot of muscles to change clinically. But in order to get approval and future funding, we need to show that it does something important to someone's life. I have to thank the Myositis Association and Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy for funding this project. So as it was alluded to, we have everyone knows the WHO and the ICF classification of disability and health. Body structures are what most of yesterday was about. I look at function and hopefully activity, trying to predict participation. So in preparation for our study, we needed to find out if indeed we improve quadriceps muscle strength, what is likely to change. And it's an isolated muscle, so we know that it's not going to automatically allow them to make big changes in their life, but we wanted to find out what's most likely. We use maximum voluntary isometric contraction. This is my coworker, Lindsay. We have this large frame, which looks like the rack. The boys call it the rack. We ask them how tall they want to be, and then we put them in here and turn it on. But it has a force transducer right here, and it's attached to a fixed cable, and so it's an isometric contraction. Now, there's issues with isometric contractions. They don't correlate as well to function as the contraction that you're actually using. So, for example, if you want to correlate it to going downstairs, you would want an eccentric quadriceps contraction between 180 and 150. That's incredibly difficult to do, and isometric can do very, very weak muscles. So in our population, we can't do isokinetic testing. This can measure down to 1/100th of a kilogram, and so we can really differentiate people of all strengths. So we looked at that and we thought, what's most likely to change with quadriceps strength? Well, in inclusion body myositis, the #1 complaint is they can't get out of a chair. So there's a test for the elderly called the timed up and go, in which you get out of a typical size chair where you're 90-90, your hips and knees are at 90. You walk 3 meters, you turn around and sit down. This is a lovely test. If it takes you more than 14 seconds to do that, you're at incredibly high risk for falls. So we thought it had nice global meaning. People with inclusion body myositis just can't do it. They can't get out of a chair. So we modified it to allow them to use their arms to push up. So we thought that might be a good option. Getting upstairs is incredibly difficult for people with quadriceps weakness. But again, for enough people to participate, they had to use the hand railings. So now you're putting in, are they using quads or are they using their arm strength? So we went to stepping up without assistance onto a progressive steps. We love the IBM functional rating scale, which is new. It's a 10-item question with 4 responses. It looks at swallowing, hand function, and leg function. So we thought that might be it's a more global participation kind of scale, so we thought that might be worth looking into. Everybody loves timed walking. The 10 meter has been done in the neuromuscular disease population for forever. Craig McDonald in UC Davis has adopted the 6-minute walk test, which has all of a sudden become the gold standard. The interesting history behind the 6-minute walk test is it's a cardiothoracic test, and a lovely one. It's used to do endurance and blood pressure and the response to exercise. It was based on a 12-minute fitness test that the military designed in the 60s. And about in the 80s, a gentleman looked at the 12-minute walk test, the 6-minute walk test, and the 2-minute walk test, found that they were all equally valid and reliable and reproducible, thought the 6-minute was a nice compromise. So that's the whole history of where the 6-minute walk test has come from. It's a lovely test for some populations, and Craig did a lovely job of validating. I think it's time to move forward, though, to look at, is it most appropriate? I didn't bring the pictures of me dragging the boys down the hall, but it speaks It's a painful, unpleasant experience for many of the boys. We had a nice little elderly woman with IBM who we take their blood pressure, we walk 6 minutes, we take their blood pressure again, we wait 3 minutes and take their blood pressure. My colleague Lindsay said, okay, we're going to wait 3 minutes and do it again. This lovely woman about slugged her because she thought she had to do the 6-minute walk test again, not just the blood pressure. So it really is, it's incredibly challenging. The Berg Balance Scale is another lovely assessment from the elderly. It's a 14-point scale with, again, a 0 to 4 response. It goes from very simple things, like being able to stand with your eyes open and closed, looking over your shoulder, to picking up something off the floor and seeing how far you can reach forward. So we also looked at that. So in inclusion body myositis, this is the beautiful answer. So the big question is, does strength predict function? And my 3 teenage daughters have an answer for everything, and it's the yeah, but. So did you come home after curfew? Yeah, but. So strength does predict function, yes, but. And inclusion body myositis, it's lovely. Quadriceps strength is correlated with function on just about everything. This is their quadriceps strength, and these are the activities that we had them do. And it is highly correlated with all of their things that they might do as life events. So we are perfectly happy with doing timed walking in this population because it's a clinically meaningful event. It's likely to change with increased quadriceps strength, even though walking is a complex task. The timed up and go, we had 85 people. This study is about to be published in Muscle and Nerve, and we believe it's the largest sample of people with inclusion body myositis to be reported on. So we have 85, but only 63 could do the modified timed up and go, even with using their arms. So that didn't work for us. The stairs, the height of the curb had a ceiling and a floor effect. Only 52 were willing to attempt it, so that wasn't good. So we like the fact that we're going to go with the timed walking, and we think that has a decent chance of improving if we improve quadriceps strength. So this shows just the lovely correlation between the 6-minute and the 2-minute. The 2-minute is slightly better and more tolerable, so we're going to advocate for using the 2-minute walk test instead of the 6-minute walk test. People forget that everyone likes to be able to compare their study to other studies, but if you switch it to velocity, you can compare any amount of timed walking. So we're really advocating for people to consider using a shorter time. This is an interesting graph. This is binned by the number of laps. You do 25-meter laps. And so 9 of our people out of the 85 with inclusion body myositis could walk at a comfortable community ambulation speed so they could keep up and do their grocery shopping, keep up with their friends. The people in red are the number of people who could cross a stoplight in the time allotted by the crosswalk signal. And if you'll notice, we had 18 people who, as I noticed yesterday, would be getting honks from the taxis because they were not out of the intersection in time. So 18 out of the 85 people could walk for 6 minutes but could not walk fast enough to cross a cross light. It gives you an indication of the severity of the group that we're working with. So here's where the yeah but comes in. We're also doing this follistatin trial in 9 individuals with Becker muscular dystrophy who also have quadriceps weakness. So we looked at their strength, and we found that it really does not correlate at all with their ability to walk. The people can walk with Becker muscular dystrophy can walk with incredibly low amounts of quadriceps strength. They rely on other things. And so we looked at some other outcome measures that we thought, if we do improve the quadriceps, might work. The Berg Balance Scale is lovely, but again, we have a ceiling effect. The timed up and go was reasonable. But we've opted to go with stair climbing, we think is going to be our outcome of choice. Everyone could do it. You notice that the difference is we initially thought we were going to go with timed walking, so we didn't do any other tests. When we saw the preliminary analysis that this was really not going to work, we started adding other things. So that's the discrepancy between the numbers. We just had no idea that quadriceps strength really wouldn't have any relationship to timed walking in this group. So to make it acceptable to people, though, this is a 4 stair time, and going from 2 seconds to 1.1 second on 4 stair times doesn't have a lot of meaning to the general public, so we're going to do 2 flights of stairs. So if your elevator were out at work, could you get yourself up to your office in a reasonable amount of time? So this is the example, just the plot of the total knee extension here. These are combined knee extensions, and the 2-minute walk distance here. If you look, that this is 10 kilograms of strength on both legs. So these individuals cannot fully straighten their leg from a sitting position because their leg weighs more than 5 kilograms, but yet they can walk for 6 minutes and 2 minutes. So kind of gives you an idea that quadricep strength is not the limiting factor in this group. We also looked at a group of boys with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which intuitively you would think that because Becker and Duchenne are so similar that they would have similar results. But that's not the case. The walking distance is quite nicely correlated with their quadricep strength. These individuals look more like the inclusion body myositis group. And so our thinking on that is probably in the early stages of muscular dystrophy, perhaps the muscle strength loss is more distributed across the body. But when you get to Becker with the slow progression, that the other key muscles for walking, such as hip abduction, really decline. And so you have that remaining quadricep muscle, but you don't have the hip abduction muscle to be able to unload your leg. So we're thinking that it's the slow decline that catches up with these boys, and then the other muscles that are necessary are no longer there. Whenever I get a chance, I have to talk about the 6-minute walk test. These are 12 boys with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, ages 7 to 12, and we have seen them now over 12 weeks. So these 2 are the same day, and these 2 are the same day. And I left before we got to finish the graph. They're doing that today. But if you look, every boy, there's a learning effect on 90% of the boys on the 6-minute walk test. And this has been documented in other populations. So really, in order to get a stable platform, you would have to ask these boys to do that twice in a very short time. And it's similar to running a half marathon for them. They're exhausted. They cry. It's difficult. So there is a learning effect, so you need to keep that into account. And if you were doing a drug study, McDonald found that there's a 30 to 30 meter difference in any given boy, either typical boys or Duchenne muscular dystrophy boys, in their walking time. So if you're going to analyze 30 meters in 6 minutes, that needs to be a fairly significant change in their performance with your intervention, or it's going to get masked. And we're looking at very small studies because it's very rare diseases, and we're looking at very short amount of time. So the variability of 30 meters is tough, I think is prohibitive for using it as an outcome measure. This boy, for example, dropped about 60, went up about 30. This guy dropped quite a bit. Now he's back to typical. So if your study ended here, it would be a failure. And the same likewise, some of the boys go up and then are back down. So I think it enters too much risk into using that as an outcome measure for a very small, very important study. So we looked at the variability within each minute of the 6-minute walk test, and they all start out running, or else they're mad and they start out crawling along. So the first minute is incredibly variable, and it really is not appropriate. What we're deciding for boys with muscular dystrophy, perhaps a 4-minute walk might be a better compromise. It has less variability. It's easier on them, but yet still gives a meaningful amount of time. People don't like the 10-meter because they don't think it has a relationship to function. So we need to do further work on this, but we're advocating the 4 or the 3-minute walk as an acceptable, less variable, less taxing alternative. We also looked at the variability of, these are muscle strength, and so each of these different icons is elbow extension, elbow flexion, knee extension, and knee flexion. And this is day 1 to day 2. And so there is a nice correlation, with the exception of knee flexion. That seems to be a little bit more variable. But I think the difference between is a nice correlation is different than if you're having a small study and looking at individual variability. So, for example, this guy would have gone from, 1 kilogram to 2 kilograms, which is doubling because it's a small number. So even with the nice correlations, the variability between strength testing in any given day, whether it be normals, grown-ups, children, is something to consider. And so we need to make sure that we're getting an accurate reflection, which probably means 2- and 3-day testing to get a stable number. So the girls always give me the yeah, but, and I always give them the maybe, let me think about it. So is strength an appropriate surrogate for function? Maybe. It depends on which muscles you're looking at and what your intervention is trying to target. I think it would be ill-conceived to accept a global testing outcome like the 6-minute walk test when you don't know what muscles you're targeting and in what population, because it varies between the diseases. So it does appear to be disease and intervention specific. We know, and we're concerned with our follistatin trial, that a single level intervention is not likely to change everything in their ability. So we've already addressed that this is a proof of concept study, and that we know that we will need to address other muscles if we're going to make major changes in people's lives. And that walking distance is, in short, small studies, really needs to be carefully selected, and you really need to hedge your bets by having multiple administrations and hopefully a shorter time. And then we all know that human performance is variable, so if you're using a functional outcome measure or even a physiologic outcome measure like strength, that you need to do multiple analysis over multiple days to try to get a stable baseline.